Liz, welcome to Well Oiled Operations. Excited to have you here.
Well, I'm really excited for this conversation. I love the work you do.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that means so much. And I'm so excited for people to possibly get introduced to your work and your books. So before we dive in, I've got lots of juicy questions today, but I'd love to hear, how did you get into leadership? What did your journey look like for you?
Oh, it was accidental. I mean, I've always been, I think I was born bossy to start out with, and I'm not like need to boss everyone around, but if there is a leadership vacuum, I step into it. If I'm in like one of those people that if you're going out to dinner with a group and people can't decide where to go, I'm like, okay,
We got this.
what do you want to do? So I'm quick to say yes to things. And I think my leadership journey really was a whole series of what I call naive yeses. And that was people asked me to do things and I just said yes before I knew I should say no. And I don't mean the naive yes isn't say yes to everything. It's to say yes to hard things that are new that you don't know how to do before your brain kicks in and says, you don't know how to do that. Like that's a job for somebody else. So I happen to have, after college joined a rapidly growing software company. There were opportunities aplenty. And I just said yes every time they asked me to do something crazy. And it just threw me into leadership.
Yeah.
And so I've just been holding on for dear life,
So how does somebody who's listening think, like, how do I get more of that? I am like you. I started my business out of age 18. So I was just completely naive and I thought, oh, sure, why not? This doesn't look that hard. But I think we all need a little bit of that, attitude of like, why not me? I mean, what are some things that you could maybe say to somebody who's a little hesitant and is thinking, but I don't know if I'm quite ready yet.
Well, yeah. So there is the chutzpah way in this, or the truly naive. And if you've got some of that nervousness and imposter syndrome, like the naive yes can work because it's saying yes before that whole mental process kicks in. Like, oh, I'd love to do that, but it's saying yes before all the but kicks in. And so I think that is one strategy, but the other, I think, is around building muscle memory. And, we talk a lot in like sports about muscle memory and like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. It's like when I picked up a badminton racket and beat my super athlete son at badminton. And he's like, where did that come from? I'm like, well, I was like badminton champion in our high school league. But it's been like 30 something years, but like, I remember what that feels like to do a drop shot or a smash. Like it kicks in. And I think we have to build this muscle memory, like, oh yeah, I did something hard before and I did well. I started something that I didn't quite know how to finish and I learned along the way. And so if you could build up just enough muscle memory of, oh, I've been here before. Like I've walked through the valley of the shadow of death. Like I have been in this dark place and gotten myself out.
Yes.
Like the dark place, meaning a hard place.
Yes. Which we all have our own hard places, whether that's business, personal, mixing the two. So I think somebody can immediately think of, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's the muscle memory of having climbed out of the valley.
Yeah.
Like I've been in this place where I didn't know what I was doing and I figured it out then. And if I figured it out then, I think I will be able to figure it out again. And once we build up enough muscle memory, we're like, yeah, I don't know how to do this, but I didn't know how to do that either. And I didn't know how to do this either. And I figured that out. And that learning muscle is the one we have to like, you do that 1 or 2 or 3 cycles.
Yeah.
And you start to default to yes.
Oh, so good. I think one of my most powerful thoughts during the pandemic was, we'll figure this out. We always do. And no, I haven't been through a pandemic and I haven't figured out a pandemic, but I've been in lots of hard places in business and I've always been able to figure it out. And that exactly what you're saying. I was using the muscle memory of doing something hard I've never done before, but figuring it out anyway.
I love this idea of we always do. And for most of us, we do figure our way out of these spaces. That's not to say we don't make mistakes on the way, but you have to climb out of that sort of nadir in the experience, because it feels so terrible to stay there. And I think it's why I love learning. I don't really love learning. It's like, oh, I love learning. I don't really I don't love that awkward bit about learning a new language or learning a new skill or figuring out how to program something. I hate that. Yeah. But the part I love about learning is getting past the hate. Oh yeah, it finally feels good to know what I'm doing. Right. And if we can feed off that, and it does propel us forward, because we don't like being in that state of incompetence for very long.
So good. So one of the books I read of yours is Multipliers. And you talk in the book, this is like a personality type referred to as a multiplier. Can you describe what that is or who that person is?
Well, a multiplier is a type of leader, but it's really a way of working. So it's not a personality type in that only people with this personality type. It's not well, extroverts do this. It's actually something that we can all choose to do. I think it comes easier for some of us than others. And I might put myself more in the others. Part of this is, a multiplier is a leader who uses their intelligence in a way that promotes, prompts, amplifies intelligence and capability in others. And by intelligence, I mean insight, knowledge, capability, talent. And so these are leaders that we are at our best around. These are leaders that we are fully utilized around and hence fully engaged. So, they're leaders who deeply use intelligence, and they're the kind of leaders that we love to work around.
Well, and in the beginning you said you were bossy, and I think a lot of us can probably relate to that bossy and when we were little. And being bossy, I mean, there's definitely qualities about us that helped us become a leader or be in charge. But I always think of when I was bossy, I wasn't a great leader, and I wasn't the person you're describing. And I see that and I go, okay, I might be naturally liking to be in charge and to be the boss, but am I naturally a good leader? And I want people listening to understand the difference.
Well, they are different. And I think it's one of the things that I have had to get over to be a good leader, is to get over the need to be the one who has the answer, who gets it done, to take charge. And sometimes being a good leader involves a lot of more passive traits.
Yeah.
Where it's somebody sent me a text the other day that said, "You are incredibly patient." And I'm like, I could hear the choirs singing around me. I'm like, nobody in my whole life. I mean, it's been almost 6 decades that I've been at this life. Nobody's ever described me as incredibly patient. And it is something I've had to develop, this ability to step back.
Right.
And pause and wait and let somebody else step up. And, in some ways, I've had to get past my own initiative, desire to take action, and also get over this, I don't know, the feel good of getting it done and making it happen. And also, I've had to get over the need to be helpful. Which a lot of us are trained to be, and especially women are kind of nurtured to be helpful. And I find that sometimes the most helpful leaders are the ones that don't offer a lot of help.
Yeah.
And that is something I've had to learn to do. It's the art of knowing when to play big as a leader, but also knowing when to play small, because that's the space where other people could step in and play big.
Well, and I have clients who love the idea of this. They would love somebody to step in and play big in their organization, but they don't believe somebody could come in and learn this specific skill set. You don't understand. I know the business inside and out, and I know how to sell this product, and nobody's going to know that. So they won't even give the opportunity to let somebody come in and play big. So how do they start to get that muscle memory, as you just said in the beginning, of learning the skill set when they've been holding on to everything?
Oh, well, I do think it is a muscle memory thing, and it's not about muscle memory about ourselves. Like in some ways, what we talked about with muscle memory of ourselves, it's kind of this growth mindset, which is, hey, I didn't know how to do it. I kind of wrapped myself around this challenge. I figured it out. Check me. Check me and my bad self out. Look what I did. And that's what builds this growth mindset. But being a multiplier is really about having a growth mindset about the people who work for you, which is like, yeah, of course they don't know how to do it because they haven't done it yet. But can you give them a chance?
Yes.
To a naive yes. Can you hold a belief about them that, you know what, yeah, they don't know how to do it. They're not going to do it as well as you. Definitely not on the first time, or maybe, but like they're not going to get it right the first time, but they're probably going to get it more right the second, and maybe fully right the third. And for me, like I very much remember this part of my own leadership journey where at first I'm like, they're not going to do it right. They're not going to do it like I would do it. And then you give someone a chance, and you know, sometimes they very much do it wrong. Like that can happen. But more often than not, they do it differently. I'm like, oh, that's not how I would have done it. But I guess that worked. Like that got the result.
Yeah.
The client was happy. And then you're like, oh yeah, they did it. This other person did it different. And that worked just as well, actually. Like not only did it get over the bar, kind of a little more, and then you get enough data points where you see, oh, they did it differently than I did. And it just might have been better. And then you get to the point where you don't just turn it over to one person. You kind of like throw it to the team and say, okay, how do we do this? And you step away and you're like, wow, check them out. Like, wow, I never would have thought to do that. Or they now have a collective force and a commitment behind something. And you know, I think it's one of the things you learn is that as a leader, like you can say, well, it needs to be exactly right. And my way is kind of right. And that's 100%. Or you say, you know what? I'm going to support somebody else doing it 95%.
Right.
Up to like what my standard was, but doing it with 100% commitment to it. And that tends to be way more powerful.
Well, and I find some people want the opportunity to be creative, to come up with a solution to, you know, a lot of times with business owners, it's like you said, their way, and this is how we need to do it. And this is how we do it here. But why not be open to somebody else's idea? Why not let other people shine and see who on your team could help relieve some of that pressure? Business owners hold so much stress and so much pressure, and it's just all on their plate. And I always tell people, you might, you know, not want to go through the process or the motion of trying to let them try once and then twice and learn it. But what's the other side of this? What if you just keep it on your plate forever? What does your life look like 10 years from now? Right? I mean, they're already working too much, and never letting go is just going to have them be here. But when the business is even bigger, have even more on their plate.
Oh yeah. There's really nothing good that comes from taking a posture of, I am indispensable.
Yes.
And, you know, I spent enough years in the corporate. So I spent exactly half of my career to date in the corporate world, and then half of it as a business owner, you know, a small business owner, small to medium. I don't know exactly how you would size this. I say we're not a startup. We're more like My Little Pony than a startup. We're just like, we don't aspire to be big. We're just small and powerful. But, you know, when you take this stance of, well, I'm going to be indispensable, you find out in the corporate world, once you leave the organization, you're actually not very indispensable. Or you go down this route and like everything flows through you and it all sits on your shoulder, and you are the bottleneck and the capacitor of the organization. And heaven forbid you go camping for the weekend and you don't have self-service, and then things fall apart. Like, yeah, you don't want to make yourself unnecessary, but you want to make yourself like valuable.
Yes.
And as a leader, like, what is your most valuable contribution to your team? It's probably, you know, to have a vision.
Yep.
Probably to hire really smart people, and then to put them in a position where they can be at their best, which is what the multiplier leader does.
Yes. So good. So I actually I have two businesses. One I have is a local brick and mortar. We teach like dance and music to children.
Mm.
And I got so good at delegating. We have about 50 employees and I just delegated myself out of the business, which is crazy because I like working. And I kind of was in this place of now what? They don't even need me. And you just saying you still want to be necessary. I didn't see the new role of being a true leader and going back and really helping them and letting them shine and giving them all the education. Yes, now, I mean, I know to do that, but I didn't know that at first to let them, to start to focus on them, right? It was almost like, well, I have nothing to do, so they don't need me. So I'll find something else to do versus it's just a new level that I was at. And I had this opportunity to step in and really lead. And I didn't create multipliers at that time. And that is just like light bulbs going off as you say that.
Well, and let me go to a metaphor that I think we all understand. And for some of us, this is just a little bit painful. We've maybe made some mistakes here, but it's the parenting metaphor. And, it's like what happens when as a parent, a mother or father, like you make yourself so essential everywhere. That eventually people become incapable. Your children become incapable. They need you for everything. And it's almost impossible for them to not resent you at some point because now they are weaklings at life.
Okay.
And then they tend to like figure this out at some point. And I've seen this play out in so many people's families where they're like, push their parents out. Nope, want you out of my world versus the parent who says, okay, how do I allow other people to be at their best, grow and be capable, and let me stand here and be available when necessary. And those kind of parents, once their kids grow up, those are the parents that get invited back in.
Yes.
Like, hey, mom, like I'm in like a tough, and they want that kind of help. And you become necessary, but not needed, or you become wanted. Like everyone wants you to engage. They want your advice. They want your input. They want your companionship.
Yeah.
But it's not out of neediness. It's because you're making that situation better. And I think it's the exact same model in good business leadership. Is how do you make it so that people want you in?
Right.
But can function without you.
Absolutely. I love that. Now you talk about multipliers and diminishers. How, like, what are some things of a diminisher that we need to catch to see, like, are we doing this? What does that look like?
Well, it's almost impossible to even understand or appreciate the idea of being a multiplier without really understanding the alternative, which is the diminishing leader. And we kind of talked about what that looks like parenting model, but diminishers are typically very smart and capable, talented people who are so focused on what's going on in their head or their own contribution that people tend to under contribute around them.
Yeah.
And as I've studied this, we find that these multiplier leaders get virtually all of people's insight, knowledge, capability, talent, energy, creativity, whereas diminishers are getting a fraction of that. And, the research I've done shows that it's less than 50%, like 45, 48%, meaning you're paying people full salary, like you're paying people their full rates, but you're only getting back 50 cents on that dollar of talent investment. So you're massively overpaying your staff for what they're doing because of the way that you're leading. And of course, when we get into this diminishing mode, we create a work environment where people are trying to contribute, but soon realize they can't. Sometimes they end up quitting and staying inside your team. They're learning, don't speak up, don't jump in and say, well, they can do this, let the boss handle it, run everything by the boss. And, organizations get weak and even toxic around these kind of leaders.
Right. Well, and even just hearing you talk about like how they're behaving or what they're doing, you've got to be really careful because like you said, they'll be quitting, but they'll stay, right? Like they've given up. So now we're overpaying. People are nervous to hire because they're like, I don't know if I'm able to afford this person. You wouldn't need to be so nervous if you actually led them to step up and reach their full potential and their capacity. but it's like we self-sabotage, right? We do it anyway. We hire because we know we need the help, but then we don't let them shine and we don't let them do their job. And now I'm hearing people say things like, well, my team is incompetent, or I just don't think I have the right people. I haven't found the right people. What if you have found the right people, but you just aren't being the right leader they need to blossom?
Or it might be the reality of the team isn't competent, and some of that is our own doing. Every time I get myself twisted up, like someone on my team is not doing it right. They're not like, I'm always like, gnashing of teeth. And then I'm like, oh yeah, you probably did that.
Yeah.
You probably did that. And here's the kicker is what we find is that most diminishing is done with the best of intentions. Right. So it's not done by the like tyrannical narcissist. This is how you tie the bow. You know, the bow is only tied this way, you know. Well, I guess there's probably some businesses, baby, with the bow has to be tied just exactly the right way. But it's not usually the narcissistic, bully kind of bossy diminisher. Most of the diminishing that's happening is coming from what I call the accidental diminisher, the leader who is perhaps too helpful.
Yes.
You know, the one who steps in and rescues someone when they're struggling with kind of a tough issue rather than let them sort that out. It's maybe the leader who is bringing so much energy. Woo! This is great. Look at us growing. Woo, woo. That nobody else has to bring energy. In fact, it's almost like an awkward, like, I don't even know how to be around this person. She's way too wound up. Or here's one of mine, the idea fountain, like, hey, what about this? We should try this. Hey, have you thought about this? And they're so prolific with their ideas that nobody else has to do any creative thinking. Like, well, I don't know. I'll just go ask Liz what she thinks. She's the fountain of ideas. You know, or the pace setting leader, or the perfectionist, like the people who are trying, they're maybe just playing a little bit too big. Or maybe
playing so big.
Strength.
Yeah. So playing so big that people just are left to be playing small because there's no room for them to play big. If you're coming up with all the ideas, it's like, where is the time for their ideas?
Right. And it's even like more subtle than that. It's like, there's not just no room for my ideas. There's no need for it. And like, I think of several bosses that I've had who are so good at certain things that I'm like, well, who am I to do that? And so I would just defer to them because they were so good at something that I didn't need to show up big at that thing. And then I noticed myself weakening around these kind of leaders, not because they were like, no, Liz, you cannot, let me keep you in your box. There was just no need for me to play big around them. And, you know, I think the essence of like trying to be a multiplier is really asking yourself this question of like, can people play at their biggest around me? Or am I doing something that's causing people to shrink, to wilt, to hold back?
Good questions. And I think we have to ask ourselves this without judgment or shame. If we're recognizing I'm being a diminisher, like I'm definitely doing some of these activities, that's amazing that you can recognize it, see it, and want to be better. Like, I am not claiming to be the most amazing leader. I have so much work to do, but I can see some of the opportunities of growth in front of me. And I'm not like shaming myself or feeling guilty about it. I just go, okay, this is something I want to work on.
Well, and, you know, having these accidental diminisher tendencies are nothing to be ashamed about, because all of them are born of strength. You know, I'm a creative thinker. I bring a lot of energy. I care about people. I want us to work at our best. I'm optimistic. I'm positive. But what we have to do as aware leaders is to learn how to bring our strengths, but know how to temper them to make room for other people's strengths. Or we will be these like strong, visionary founders, owners who are surrounded by, this probably sounds a little too dramatic, but like weaklings. Like we're bringing too much of our own strength. And what I love about your work is it's about how do you build a team that is strong even when you are not there?
Yes, absolutely. Well, my last question, I feel like you've answered. I was going to ask you, like, how do we create this workplace of multipliers? But I feel like you've kind of gone into that of like, it starts with us. Like, we need to first be this person. And it sounds like they get to step in and kind of fulfill that. But is there anything else you would add to that of like creating that workplace culture of multipliers?
Well, there's certainly things that leaders can do. Or, for example, instead of giving answers, ask the questions. If you're going into a meeting where you're prone to over contribute, maybe like think of your contribution like chips, poker chips or quarters, like that. Maybe give yourself a budget. Like, I only have 3 or 4 in this meeting, and how am I going to play my ideas and contribution sparingly but powerfully? Maybe it's giving people 51% of the vote. Like, you know what? You're in charge of this. Like, you don't need to place the phone call. I give you 51%. Maybe not on the whole operation, but this decision or this issue or with this customer, it's looking for people's native genius. It's remembering, like, once you help someone, to like make sure that you give them back control, what I call give the pen back. Lots of things that the leaders can do. But I think in some ways, the most powerful thing you can do as a leader is just let people know what your accidental diminishing tendencies are. Because if everyone on your team knows that, like for me, I'm a fountain of ideas. We all know it.
Yeah.
and everyone teases me about this. Like, I get mocked for this. A lot of that mocking comes from myself. But because of that, because we all laugh at this, it gives permission for people who work for me to say, Liz, are you like having an idea party right now? Or do you actually want us to stop what we're working in and work on this? I'm like, it's an idea party. Like, ignore me as needed to get your job done. Like, or if someone knows you're a rescuer, they can say, like, you know what, Stacy, I totally appreciate the support, but I got this and I'll get it to the finish line. Save your energy for cheering for me when I'm done. And it allows us to kind of gently push back over well-intended diminishing. And I tell you what, like, it's a numbers game. Either a leader can be hypersensitive themselves, or they can tell their whole team, let's say 10 people. And now you've got 10 people helping you be a multiplier. I'll take the 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when you say like, give them that 51%, I love that so much. A lot of times it's like, we want to solve the problem. We want to give the answer. And sometimes just the subtle, when they say, okay, what do you think we should do about fill in the blank? I mean, even going back to say, what do you think? Like let them speak first and see, because you'll be surprised sometimes what comes out of people you're maybe not used to having them give the solution. They're just here to take it and run with it. But a lot of times they come up with great solutions, and just let them have the opportunity to see.
They know, like, the little rule of thumb I use in my mind is that when someone comes to me and asks for my help or a decision, I tell myself 80 to 90% of the time, I think it's closer to 90, they already have an idea in mind and they know what to do. What they're looking for is support or sympathy. And, my friend Adam Grant, he's kind of a prolific author, and he really likes multipliers because he says, I have rescuer tendencies. And he reminds himself that when people come to him looking for answers, what they want is sympathy, not solutions.
Yes.
And so it's not like just say, I don't know, do whatever you want. It's like, sympathize with the challenge, with the situation they're in, but don't give them a solution. Ask them, what do you think? If you were to make the decision, what would you do? What's the right thing for us to do?
So good.
Yeah. If you were my advisor, what would you tell me to do? Okay, go do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw Adam Grant, somebody reshared something this morning of his, and it said like something about a good leader is listening more than they're talking in the meeting or something. And I was like, ooh, I think I talk more than I listen in the meeting. And again, it's like, it wasn't judgment. It was just, I noticed it. I'm gonna be aware in the next meeting. Like, I love just like hearing you say that it's like another opportunity of way to be better.
Yeah. This is one, like, if you really want to shift your talk to listen ratio, like go into a conversation and think like, I've got 5 chips. That's it.
Okay.
And it's hard. Because I'm like, oh, I always have this little add-on that I want. And most of them are just add-ons, but
okay. Right. We think like they need to hear this. Like, this is a really good idea.
Yeah. And so when it's like kind of like a me also comment, like, yeah,
Yeah.
I've had this experience as well. We're reinforcing it. But like the little rule of thumb is, I think my little acronym for it is user, like contribute where you have an idea that is unique, succinct, evidence-based, and relevant. Like that is where you want to play your chips if you're going to have maximum impact.
So good. Liz, this has been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you, find your books? Could you share and let people know? And I know you have more than just the Multipliers book, so feel free to share.
Oh, well, goodness. Let's see. I've got several books, Multipliers, Rookie Smarts, and Impact Players. And you can find those books kind of anywhere. Yeah, you know, Amazon, of course, local booksellers, CEO Reads, a bunch of places. And then information about me, I'm pretty easy to find on social media at Liz Wiseman and Twitter, thewisemangroup.com. And it's thewisemangroup.com, because if you go to wisemangroup.com, it's an interior design firm in San Francisco, and I guarantee you it's way more interesting. Their website's way more interesting. But you're not going to get a lot of help on leadership, but your house will look great.
Right.
I go to their website.
Nice. I love it. Liz, thank you for your time. Thank you for writing these incredible books. If you're listening to this and you have not started to dive into her books, please go dive in. You will be happy you did. So Liz, again, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you for your work.